and I am Assistant Dean for Graduate Student Professional Development at Duke. And welcome to today's HR Zoom session featuring two of the human resources professionals from RTI International. I want to introduce them today and tell you just a little bit about how today's session is going to go, and I'm going to be admitting folks as I speak, so pardon that. So first, I want to introduce Bob Miles, who is Manager of Talent Acquisition and Programs at RTI International. In that role, he delivers strategic and support services to RTI Health Solutions, Discovery Sciences, and Technology Advancement and Commercialization Business Unit. He has been at RTI through 2 stints for a total of about 16 years. And he's also had experience working with Word Corporation, IBM, and Aerotech Recruiting. So welcome and thank you to Bob. And then I also want to welcome and thank our another professional from RTI, Aaron Turner, who is Senior Manager in Talent Acquisition at RTI. He has over 20 years of experience in full life cycle recruiting and recruiting leadership, HR, sales, business development, financial tracking, and contractual reporting. So welcome and thank you to Aaron as well. So for the attendees on today's call, we'll start with the 5 key questions for our speakers, and then we'll move to some questions that you all submitted over the registration. You're also welcome, if you have follow-up questions for anything that Bob and Aaron tell us today, you're welcome to post those in the chat as we go along, and then we can try to address them as we go through, because we do have a big group on today. Great. Well, welcome to Bob and Aaron, and thank you again for joining us. We had a lot of interest in this topic, as you can see. And so let's go ahead and kick it off with the first question. Can you tell us a bit about RTI International and describe a typical day for a PhD level hire?
That's a tricky one. I'll start this one if you don't mind, Aaron. Okay, so can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. So RTI International, primarily we're a government contracted researcher, and to make a very long story short, we're divided into 4 distinctly different business units. Aaron supports our social sciences group, as well as our general and administrative functions. We have an international development group, which does research around the world, implementing projects, mostly in third world underdeveloped countries, trying to make their lives better through various projects. And then I support our laboratory groups in RTI Health Solutions, which is our only commercial business unit. And they provide consultation out in the pharmaceutical, med device, and CRO world. It's important to understand the differences in RTI, and the things like Aaron's day-to-day is completely different than mine, because the same thing would be the case for a PhD, depending on which business unit you were to join. Obviously on the lab side, you're going to work in the lab. On the social science side, you could do anything from, literature reviews to writing proposals, contributing scientific stature in some way. So it would really just vary, I'm sure, with how many 20-some people on the call. If we were to hire every one of you, you would all have a different day depending on where you fell into the organization. Want to add to that, Aaron?
Most of our people don't support a project. They're very multidisciplinary, so they would work across 8 to 10 projects potentially in a day, but usually across a time period. We have a very similar feel to kind of like academia. The only difference is that you don't have to secure your own funding a lot of times, so there's a larger staff that can help with that. So in the course of a day, you could be a PI on one project, you could be doing literature reviews on another, you could be doing data analysis on another. So the days, some people like that. We tend to get used to that. In my team, when we recruited people, we would find out after they started that no one really explained that to them, because we thought that's how life was. So we've gotten better about being open about, it is, when we post a job, it's never everything you're going to do. We just have to post something, which is the majority of the role. But so if you like diversification in what you're doing amongst the day, week, month, RTI is a good place because there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of things. And Also, it allows you to go into things that you've probably never really been in, whether it's new science or technology areas, because when you're doing 10% of something, someone doesn't need you to be an expert. They're willing to give you a shot. So I think it's real flexible about what you could and will be doing on a day-to-day at RTI.
Yeah, and the beauty of that too is it allows you time as coming out of coursework for so many years to figure out what you enjoy. Because in some cases, people come on board and quickly realize, I'll use my groups for an example. They strictly want to be in the lab. Others like going into the proposal writing, and then others like management. So what they've done is they've created different career tracks based on the management and technical capabilities. So you don't have to necessarily become a people manager in order to advance in your career. You could do so technically speaking. And when you come in fresh out, it gives you an opportunity to work on several different projects and learn what you really enjoy rather than, what gives you a paycheck.
Terrific. Thanks so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm having some technical issues on my end, so if I drop out, my colleague Molly Starback is going to take over for me. Thank you. All right, so next let's talk about how folks get hired into those positions with lots of variety and projects. Can you talk to us about your hiring process? What do you look at in terms of application materials, the resume, the CV, the cover letter? Are there other materials that you consider as part of your process?
Sure. So I think it's important to know we're a government contractor, so we have to follow compliance. Every one of our jobs has to be posted. And for us to consider anyone, you have to meet the minimum qualifications of the job. Me personally, I do not read cover letters 90% of the time, but if the job asks for a cover letter, that means that the hiring manager is looking for it for one reason or another. I've even had hiring managers who don't want to ask for it just to see who includes the cover letter. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis. I'm looking more for someone to match the job that we have, and I might go to a cover letter if I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't see any connection here. I'll read the cover letter to see maybe I missed something since I'm not technical. But I would say to make sure if you're looking for roles, I know we don't say that people are overqualified for roles, but at RTI, if we post something as a bachelor's level or a master's level, if you have a PhD, you probably want to focus on the PhD level roles, only because our managers look at those as different levels and they will in their head say, oh, this person has a PhD, they'd be bored in this role. Sometimes making the assumption on their own without actually talking to the person or the recruiter on things. So it's important to look at it from that lens. Write your resume like the job is written. Don't change things, but use the same types of words and phrases, because usually to get to the technical team, you have to go through an administrative recruiter or talent acquisition partner who may not be, as savvy and understand all the acronyms and synonyms that are in the field that you're working. Bob, I'll leave some for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Now, I would echo exactly what Aaron said on the cover letters. Unless it explicitly asks for a cover letter, I am of the opinion that it's a complete and total waste of time. And I know career services offices sometimes tell you otherwise, but that's a fact. So then the other thing is as it relates to your resume, once upon a time, you'd write a resume and you'd use that same resume for every job that you applied. But now it's just making there's overlap between your resume and the job, because right now especially the market is incredibly saturated, and they're going to look at those excuse me, for the best fit for the role. And in some cases, excluding ourselves, because we don't do this, but in some cases with some of the larger companies, they use algorithms that pair the resume to the job description, and then you get a score. And with so many resumes coming into the system, unless you're a 100% match, the 98s and 99s probably are never getting looked at by human eyes. So just, we're not saying embellish, but just make sure if you are qualified for a job, make sure your resume has the instrumentation, has the techniques, has the different items on the job description, on your resume, or it could be an issue and you getting through. On that note too, we just had this conversation actually in a meeting I was in earlier today, where they were trying to create job descriptions across the institute, and they had a job description for a chemist, and I explained that I support 10 different groups that hire chemists, and every single chemist is different. So to that point, it's the same theory. Just make sure that your resume and the job description have overlap, that the keywords are there.
Hi, everyone. This is Molly Starback. I'm the director of the postdoc office, and I think that Melissa may be experiencing some difficulties with her audio. That was happening to her earlier today, unfortunately. So I'm going to pop in here with question number 3 for our speakers. So besides being a good scientist or researcher, what other skills, experience, or training are important? So for example, could you talk about soft skills, or would certifications such as leadership training or PMP be valuable for an applicant at RTI?
So I'll start this one, but every role is pretty unique. To give an example, everything we do is based on awards, and contracts that are awarded to RTI. So a position that I open today, might have a different requirement than one that I open tomorrow, because what they do when they win more work is they look at the current headcount and the staff and the capabilities that are there, and then look at the gaps that exist currently. So if we were to open a PhD today, incidentally, I opened an organic or a medicinal chemistry postdoc this morning. Hint, hint, if anybody out there is a medicinal chemist, go look for that role. But if we open the same role in a month, that could be completely different, because some people might drop off projects and there might be a different bench available at that time. From a soft skill perspective, it's always going to be the basics, verbal and written communication skills, knowing how to work with different levels of the organization. The writing skills are going to come into play, as far as, getting involved in whether it's poster sessions or proposals. It all varies based on the job.
I do think that mentioning a PMP is a good thing. Even if you're not going to use it, a PMP shows that you've studied, you understand how to manage things. It's also something the government's going into requiring more on contracts, so it's not a bad thing to have. Although if you want to be on the research side, getting a PMP is a little bit harder because it requires you to have hours of managing. I think in our setting, presentation skills are good, not only from presenting out on what you've done, but also in an institute or any business, how you sell your ideas is a way of how you get extra money to do other projects. So learning and being good at that is awesome. I think making sure you're multi-dimensional, meaning that you have quant and qualitative skills and can do either side, is helpful. Also, the flexibility to work in different domains is good. Like we said earlier, we're very multidisciplinary, so people have to switch gears almost hourly. So showing and being able to do that, or even being open to doing that, is a huge thing. And, the other thing, as we get further along in 2020, we're all virtual. Here at RTI, and I know a lot of places, digitization is huge. So any technological advancement type skills that you've learned or pushing to, whether it's AI or machine learning or like that, all of that looks great on a resume or a CV.
Great, thank you very much. And I would encourage all the Duke people on the line to be aware that we have tons of digital classes you can take through the Roots courses. So I would check those out so you can follow this excellent advice. Our next question is, what can postdocs and students who would like to work in this field or explore it further do to prepare?
I think that it's good. Being a PhD means that you're invested in an area of research. So if you call like other folks at RTI or reach out to them, say through LinkedIn, who are in an area that you have interest in, and you put a personable letter to them, asking them, telling them you want to connect and learn more about them and the work, most of them will respond. They may not do it quickly because they don't check LinkedIn every day, but I think doing research on a company like RTI or wherever you're going to go is very important. See what the people that are in the roles you want to be in 10 years, see how they got there. So I think that you can have a better understanding when you have the conversations of the likely life cycle of an individual who came in at the level you'll be coming in, but also is at a level where you hope to be in the future. It gives you kind of a snapshot of, you know, how companies look at those types of roles and what they look for in those type of roles.
Yeah, and then and in this virtual world, I mean, obviously the first recommendation I would usually make is to go to the local events and the presentations and the networking. But now they're picking up virtually, so keep an eye on what's going on virtually and who's presenting at these events and conferences, because it could be a good opportunity to get yourself in front of someone. And virtually works just as well as in person now. I mean, obviously, if these in-person events are taking place, it's highly recommended to go there and, you know, shake someone's hand and, well, socially.
No shaking hands.
Fist bump. But virtually, it's, you know, right now everybody's virtual, so there's no advantage. But just getting in front of people and letting them know who you are and your interests. And like Aaron said, our scientists, you know, they do incredible work and they're very proud of the work they do. And when someone comes to them to hear more, they're usually, I mean, they're always pretty willing to do so. And, you know, you just have to be patient because they're, you know, we live in LinkedIn, they don't. They will get back to you. And look at our website. You know, experts on the website, and you could keyword search this. And generally speaking, I think all of them, when they have their research out on the website, I think every one of them has their contact information if you want to reach out. And, you know, I'd say to do so, and then just be patient. They'll get back to you.
Yeah, we also have on our company website, Ask the Experts, where you can find experts in certain areas and they track and send the questions to those experts, but also just networking in general. Some of our roles, we're lucky enough to get tons of applicants. I think it's a good and a bad problem to have. So knowing and being referred and making sure you even get viewed is the best way to get in anywhere, not just RTI.
Thank you. That is, Melissa's back. All right, I'll turn it back over to Melissa.
Perfect.
I want to just throw one more quick one out there that we overlooked, was your professors probably know our scientists. There's a very good chance of that. So leverage your professors as well and your advisors.
Great suggestion. Thank you, Bob, for bringing that up. And Molly, thanks for taking over while I had some technical problems. I think I'm back now. So now time for the $1 million question. What's the employment outlook for RTI given the COVID crisis? That is the question that everybody tuned in for.
It's awesome.
Yeah, we've never been busier, honestly.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've opened 2 chemistry postdocs just in the last 3 days. That's another shameless plug for anyone that wants to go look at those. But like Aaron said, since we've shut down in mid-March, it just has only picked up. So it's looking good. We're fortunate to be in a field where, you know, between the social and the laboratory side and on the clinical side with Health Solutions, we're going to be pursuing, you know, more work in the infectious disease area. So, you know, that's an unfortunate time, but a benefit to being in the business we are.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, if you're a PhD and you graduate in, say, December, or you graduate in June, don't wait till you graduate to start looking. You need to start looking 3 or 4 months in advance, and this is normal. And now we're in different times where there's, you know, 30 million other people who wouldn't normally be looking for jobs looking at the same time. So I would say start early and often, and let the employers tell you, oh, we can't wait that long, because I know on our side, if we have someone and we're interviewing for PhD level, we'll wait 2 or 3 months if we have to. I think the other thing that's important to know in the process, there's these things called knockout questions. So if you fill out your application and the first question says, do you have a PhD? The important thing is you're going to have to think to yourself that, yes, I will have a PhD when I start, because if you answer no, you're not qualified for the role and you'll never even get viewed.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay, Aaron?
I can.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. I muted my video to see if that would help the situation. I'm not sure what's going on. Well, at this point, I want to turn our attention, because Bob and Aaron have done such a great job at answering the 5 key questions. I want to give folks a chance to formulate some questions in the chat. And while you do that, I want to share some questions that came in through the registration. I'll try to identify some questions we haven't already touched on yet. So what's something that most PhD applicants are missing in their applications that you are seeking when you're looking for a job, for candidates?
That would go back to the to the resume, in my opinion, where, you know, like I'm going through them now, and it's not aligning with the job description. And I use a real life example. Last year, I had a candidate, I rejected her, and her friend worked internally, reached out, told me about her friend had applied and how she was awesome for this role. I went and I pulled up the resume again, figuring I must have missed something. And I didn't miss anything. It was just, there was no connection to the job at all. And as a favor, I called her to talk to her, and she was perfect for the job. But her resume, it was just bad. And it was a poorly written resume. It didn't align with the role. And you know, for reference, it was a forensic scientist role, and she didn't even have the word forensic on the resume, you know, like, and you know, she had the PhD, but she had no related work experience. So it was very lacking in detail, right? And you don't want to, you know, you don't want to write a thesis or a dissertation for a resume, but you need to have detail as related to the job and the job description. Otherwise, you could easily get overlooked. So that'd be the first thing.
I think too, at the PhD level, it's important to realize your resume and CV is going to be the length it is. Don't try to shorten it down by cutting out important information.
Yeah.
We hear people all the time tell us that people have told them to keep it to 1 page, keep it to 2 page. Majority of the resumes that I see are 30 or 40 pages because they have pages and pages of publications. You don't want to cut that stuff off, because if it's not there, it doesn't exist to the ignorant eyes of HR and recruiters who are looking at it. We can't make these connections if it's not there. If it's not there, it doesn't exist. So don't take away any of the great stuff and work that you've put in, whether it's classes in school, whether it's internships. Make sure it's all on there.
Yeah, because that whole myth of the short resume came about when, well, I'd say when I was applying for jobs, where you were literally mailing in resumes, right? And it was a thick package. But now we're sitting back behind a computer and we're scrolling. So it really doesn't matter.
That's a great point and good context for that advice. Thank you.
Now, one thing I will say is another old reference with the newspaper is make sure the most important information is above the fold. And what that means is, excuse me, old newspapers were folded. So whatever was on the top of the front page was most important. Make sure you catch their attention in that first half page of your resume so that they keep reading. Because I don't agree with this stat, but they say, what was it? Average recruiter looks at a resume for 6 seconds. That's you know, kind of ridiculous to me, but in the same token, you want to get their attention up front.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous. I don't spend more than 2, Bob. No, I think it's important too. I tell people as you're coming out as a fresh out PhD, you probably want your education first and foremost, because it's going to be so directly related. Once you're, you know, further along in your career, if you're applying to jobs that maybe aren't directly related to your PhD or your undergrad, maybe you put that further down in the document because you want to bring out the experience that relates to the job. So I do resonate with some of that, because I think it is important to get the most relevant information first.
Yeah, and then the other thing I would add to that too is to not forget about LinkedIn. You know, you want to make sure you're out there in LinkedIn. When I hire postdocs, occasionally the people that apply just aren't qualified for the roles I'm looking for. So then I go to LinkedIn to search for candidates, and you know, LinkedIn has a wealth of candidates, and you want to make sure you have your keywords. You don't want it to mimic your resume word for word, but you want to make sure you have your keywords in there. Make sure it's presentable. You know, the whole thing. You could Google how to make a good LinkedIn profile. You know, nice picture, very succinct keywords, and just make sure you're putting that out there as well, because that's very important.
Yeah, and I think if you're interested in RTI, definitely connect with Bob and I. You'll see a lot of the information and things that are going on at the company, and you can always reach out. And we can't make sure people get hired. We can make sure they get viewed and in the process at times, and we're happy to do that when we can.
Yeah, and the beauty is every one of our jobs goes to LinkedIn, and if I post it, my name and face is on the posting. The same thing for Aaron, so you can tell who posted what job and reach out to that person. Or if you wanted to reach out to one of us, we could get you in touch with the appropriate person.
Terrific. Thank you both. I want to see if we have any questions from the folks who are with us on the call right now. And if not, we can jump to another question from registration, but I know we have a lot of folks. And I think maybe the best way is to do an applause or a thumbs up reaction so I can see if you have a question. See, it looks like we have a question from Seth Morgan. Can you go more into the difference between master's and PhD roles at RTI? We do have some folks who are finishing master's degrees on the call with us today.
So the biggest difference for us is a lot of times I try to tell my team to post those in the title so you can see directly. There's not a huge divide of what to expect in the roles, but there's a huge divide in the manager's head on expectations of what the roles will be. So whereas it's, you know, sometimes we can consider a PhD student for a master's level role, the majority of our managers won't do that. So I think to spend more of your efforts and time on the level of the role for you. I don't know there's a huge difference in what they're doing, except for, you know, a PhD is going to be expected to be able to do a whole lot more. And a lot of times they want to look at how, you know, if they've ever gotten their own funding, how they can do things like that. Each role's a little bit different. So certainly read into the job description, but in the titles is where you'll get a feel whether they're looking master's level, bachelor's level, or a PhD level.
And Aaron, could you tell us what are some key words that folks could look for in those titles that would give them that clue?
PhD, master.
Okay.
Yeah, we kind of spell it out because it's, you know, we have a lot of the similar level, like a public health analyst is just a common role that you could post on anything and they probably all fall under it. So if you see like a PhD public health analyst, and some of them are, you know, research public health, they all kind of fall within that public, not all of them, but that's probably the most common in my groups.
Great, thank you. All right, and then one more that came in through the chat. Does RTI hire international PhD students or postdocs who are finishing up? And can you sponsor work visas?
All the time, yeah. I'd say I probably do about 10 postdocs a year. And then on top of that, another 5 that you'll have to be at the PhD level. And more than a third of those are going to be sponsored. I'd say I'd probably go to 50%.
Yeah, I will say in all of our postings, we will, if it states that a, you know, U.S. citizenship is required, that probably means it supports a government contract that requires it for whatever purposes. We are an international company. We're in 30 plus countries. So that is a big reach of our company. Most of Bob and my's job, Bob does some stuff in Europe and other places, but a lot of it is domestically based, but the research we do is all international. Yeah. Where our international development team, they actually do implementation of projects in foreign countries. So it's not as much research based as it is implementing programs.
Thank you. So let me see if I can sneak in one last question. And that is, What are kind of the changes that have happened in the era of COVID for folks who are in these kinds of positions? Is it remote work? Are people working in person on the research teams? What does the work environment look like? And do you expect it to go back to in person at some point?
I hope so. I'm not a work from home person.
Same.
So speaking to the laboratory groups first, because that would be the place where, the question would come more in, because they're more limited in their scope of what they could do remote. So right now, the way it's working, the laboratory groups have continued to hire consistently through COVID, and the way they're doing it now is they're taking extra precaution. I'm not there, so I can't see it fully on how they're doing this, but they're staggering. So, there are times through the week when we're, normal times when we're in the office, where, people might spend an entire day writing proposals, right? So on those days where they would normally stagger, they just stay home. So that's been the operation, just making sure, they're distancing at the benches, they're taking all the precautions. For everybody else, it's really been, unless you absolutely have to be in the office, you're not allowed in the office. I even had to, just go in and pick up some things from my office, because when this was all planned, we were going to be out of the office for 2 weeks. And obviously been much longer than 2 weeks now. And even just going in, and I was literally in the building for 4 minutes, the precautions were just tremendous. And, they continue to be very cautious. I know of some people that do go in on occasion, for various reasons, and the protocols are strict, and they just want to make sure that we're doing everything right. And it's been successful. I don't even know if we've had a single domestic case to date that I'm aware of, anyway, and they've been announcing those. So, I mean, we've all adjusted. We're all used to this, Zoom. We're used to cats and dogs jumping on the desks, and everybody just, gets a laugh and moves on. But really, other than our location, nothing has really changed. I hate it. I'm very vocal about it when we have our meetings, but I've learned to deal with it, and I've gotten better at it. But we're not scheduled to go back until January 4th, which is, knocking on wood that happens. And then I think even as we approach January 4th, we'll probably get word that it's going to be some sort of staggered return. But for the most part, what we've heard out of HR is you have performance is exceptional. There's actually some people performing better. Maybe it's because they're home alone and there's no distractions. Aaron and I, we sit right by the coffee bar. So we drink a lot of coffee when we're there, and so now we don't do that, so that's good. But some people are performing at a higher level working remotely than they were before. And then from a recruiting point of view, we have some managers who are veterans, been at RTI, our tenures are quite long, and they've been adamant that they don't hire remote workers because that's not how it's done. And even they're coming around as we open new jobs and saying, I was wrong all these years, and we'll consider that person for remote, because everybody's seeing that this model does work. And it opens up our candidates, because a lot of the groups I work for on the clinical side and the pharma side, those people are in Philadelphia and Boston. They don't move to North Carolina.
Well, that's really good news and a very hopeful note to end on. Thank you so much, Bob, for sticking around a few extra minutes, and we've kept you past the appointed time. I know Aaron had to jump away to another meeting, but thank you very much for sharing with us today. And is it okay if folks reach out to connect with you on LinkedIn?
Oh, absolutely. I encourage it, because when you follow us, you'll see every job posted. You'll see what's going on. I'd also encourage now, although it's not the traditional way of doing things, look at the internships too. because normally PhDs don't take internships, but we've been opening that up a bit as well.
And they can see those by following you on LinkedIn as well?
Yeah, they get posted as well. I follow RTI, definitely.
Terrific. That's wonderful advice. Bob, thank you again for joining us today. And thanks to all of you who are joining the call. And stay safe, everybody.